Hello, Zaltho Live listeners. Before we get started, we wanted to let you know that more teachings from Zen monk Claude AnShin Thomas are available in his two books, At Hell's Gate, A Soldier's Journey from War to Peace, and Bringing Meditation to Life, 108 Teachings on the Path of Zen Practice. Both are available wherever books are sold, and all proceeds go to the Zaltho Foundation, dedicated to promoting nonviolence, awareness, and positive change.
Hello and welcome to Zaltho Live, the podcast featuring Zen Buddhist monk Claude AnShin Thomas, who will share with you his life experiences that includes not only military combat, personal violence, and addiction, but also healing, transformation, and the ongoing joy of everyday life. Please enjoy listening.
Questions? Yoko.
Anjan, how has your relationship to being on time been for you? I'm like before the practice and coming into the practice.
Yeah. I'm waiting for Kenshin here. She's tweaking the system. I went through different phases, I would say. In the military, there was no question. In high school, there was no question about being on time. My father was a school teacher in the school where I went. So it was I was just always on time until my senior year. Then I got lazy. You know, it was kind of like, I was already heading down a path of sort of unconsciousness. In the military, then no question about being on time. Out of the military, time to being on time it depends. It depended on what it was. If it was for a drug purchase, I was on time. If it was for a buy or for a sell, I was on time. But anything else, it was sort of, sometimes I made it, sometimes I didn't make it. You know, it was just not something that I considered a great deal, I don't really remember. I do know that once I went into treatment and stopped using drugs to include alcohol, and I started getting support from the groups that provide that support. One of the deals was you show up early, you stay late. So I was on time. I think that's where my commitment to time began to start. Although I must say, like when I was attempting to be a regular kind of person, like regular job and all of that, and because of the unaddressed post-traumatic stress, or the moral injury / post-traumatic stress that I was living with, because I hadn't yet made peace with this, my sleeplessness and this regular kind of working it just didn't appeal to me. It didn't feel right with me. I didn't feel right in my skin. I had a tough time with that, with being on time. Because my start time was 7. It was a 30-minute drive to where I worked. So that meant like a 5:30 wake up, and sometimes I wasn't getting home, and I wasn't getting back home until like 4:30, or if I was home, I wasn't able to get even close to getting some rest. Sometimes what I would do is I had a van at the time, I would just drive my van to work, I'd sleep in my van, so that I could be there on time. But once that at a certain point, I just understood. I think it was in the monastery where I lived, and as I continued to this sort of waking up after not waking up from how my life had been distorted by my drug and alcohol use and by my the unaddressed issues around my combat service. Once I began to wake up around that, being on time became really important to me, because being on time, like if you invite me to something, it's important for me to be there when you ask me to be there. It's a sign of respect to you, to respect myself and respect to you. So yes, those things became increasingly more important to me. Question? Yes, Genry. If you have a question behind me, you can just raise your hand. I can see it on the screen.
Do you remember the first retreat that you facilitated? And if so, how did it go? Could you share some?
Yeah. I don't actually remember. I mean, I have vague memories of some early retreats, and they would be like with one or two people. And how they went, it's like it's never been an issue for me. Like, how did the retreat go? I have no, it's like I don't have really any idea, because I do what I do. I offer what I offer, and some people gravitate to that and some don't. I know that in the early stages of my doing this, it was I wasn't as clear as I am now. And I was more invested in. I wasn't as clear, and I wasn't as skillful as I am now. That's developed over time, through with experience, and because I wanted to develop. I wanted to become more skillful at the craft of facilitating a retreat. I know in the beginning I was probably quite insecure and frightened, or insecure and nervous, but I did it anyway and didn't tell anybody any of that. And there are still times today when, in front of a retreat or in front of a talk, I can get some anxiety, but not too often. So no, I don't really remember. I mean, I've been doing this for really a long time. I was facilitating retreat-like events with veterans before I was ordained. So, yes. Question? Myozan.
If I have developed certain reactions to similar situations over my lifetime, do you think that this is rather a trap-like conditioning patterns and that I should rather behave fresh in every moment, or can this also be helpful?
No should. There's no I should. What did I hear? I heard somebody say, you have to stop shoulding on yourself. So I would say that each moment needs to be greeted freshly. And however, my life experience serves me as I experience each moment. I mean, each encounter is like it is. My life experience helps me in engaging with certain situations. I learn from my life experience. It informs me. So I don't discount it. But also, the way I responded to one circumstance is not going to be the way I responded to a similar circumstance if it happens, because that circumstance that I responded to will never happen that way again. each occurrence is a unique experience. Each one. There are experiences that share similarities. But yes, each moment is fresh. Each moment is new. Each experience is slightly different. That I choose not to regret the past. It's like there isn't really any past or any future. Those don't exist. Except for in this present moment. Then in this moment, all things exist. So how does my past experiences inform me so that I make the best decision that I can make in that moment in any given circumstance? However, I watch then when I make these, I just do it. I'm a person of action. I just do things. And when I do, like in a particular circumstances, I do something and then I observe how it worked. I observe the reactions. I observe the reactions to my decisions, and then I see how then through that process I learn how to. It informs me about how to respond to similar kinds of circumstances. It informs me about how I'm conditioned to respond and how that doesn't serve me well, and how. Yeah, I'll like that. I'll just leave it there. I'm rambling now. Questions? Yes.
So I'm dealing a lot with fear. So do I let go of fear, or does fear let go of me?
Neither. Yes. What is it? I just wrote something. Fear is something about. Fear is not a really. Fear is a something or other teacher. Fear is important. It can give me information. What I needed to learn to do was not attempt to push my fear away and not allow it to decide for me. I had to learn how to have an active, conscious relation with my fear. And not wanting it or allowing it to control me doesn't enable me to do that. So I need to learn how to have fear and not reject it nor wish to be over it or away from it, and also not let it run my life, but to pay attention to it. Because there's information for me in there somewhere. And that's at the root of this practice. Zen practice is about waking up. It's not about, it's just about waking up. So it's waking up to the reality of fear as I experience it, so that it can inform me rather than me formulating ideas about how I'm supposed to deal with that fear. Question. First MJ and then Kelby.
Can you say more about moral injury? Examples, how a person knows that they have one?
Well, moral injury is simply defined as the betrayal of what's right by people in positions of power. So how that manifests itself in an individual is particular to that individual. So looking for a definition or looking for a standard path, okay, this is what moral injury is, and this is how it shows itself, is an exercise in futility in a way. I mean, it's information, but it's only intellectual information. How does it apply in my life? Where does it fit or doesn't fit? I see most people get into trouble when they take a concept and they attempt to get their life to conform to that concept. And that really doesn't facilitate healing. I have to go, moral injury is the betrayal of what is right by people in positions of power. And then just sort of sit with that and say, okay, so how am I affected by this? How does moral injury show itself in my life? And be open to whatever might arrive in that moment, what might arrive through that process, not that moment, but that process. But see, that's, again, I always come back to an active meditation practice. An active meditation practice. A lot of people sit expecting to get over their fear. or they sit to sort of suddenly become completely, totally aware of what moral injury is in their life, or they sit for all these sorts of reasons, and because of that, they're not really sitting. They're sitting looking for something, and until we can sit just to sit and see what shows itself to us through that process, and until we can carry that sitting into everything we do all of the time, stop attempting to force life to conform to our ideas of it, then the practice of meditation the practice of meditation becomes unavailable to us. And then we're just going through the motions, our ideas of it. That's why it's so critical to find people who are authentic teachers, not people who recite chapter and verse or can recite or give lectures, academic lectures on this text or that text, but people who speak in a common language, who can take this information and pass it on in very practical ways. That's the point. Kelby.
Would you be able to share a personal experience about recognizing a fear in a way, your relationship to a fear and how it served you? I'm not sure if that was clear.
Well, so fear and how it served me.
I think you meant your relationship with the fear served you.
Say it again.
The relationship with the fear. You mentioned having a relationship with the fear.
Well, I can't do anything else but have a relation with my fear. I mean, either that, if I don't have a relation with my fear, then I'm attempting to repress it and pretend I don't have it, or it's running my life. And so a relationship with my fear is important. So when every time I get on an airplane for a long haul flight, I'm risking my life. Every time. I've had an embolism in the past, both lungs. So I'm vulnerable to have another embolism. Now I do everything I can to care for that, to care for myself, with full awareness, with as much awareness of this process that I can have. So I wear compression stockings, hospital grade. They're feet to hips, but individual legs. And then 4 days before I fly, I go on a regimen of a particular type of blood thinner to include the day that I fly. When I'm traveling by plane, I make sure on a long haul I make sure I drink plenty of water. I get up and move as often as I can. I do specific exercises that I was given, because I learned that the veins don't have a mechanism. The arteries have a mechanism to pump the blood, the heart. The veins don't have a mechanism to pump the blood back. The way that works is through activity. So I have exercises to do to stimulate that. And still, in front of a long haul flight, I have some anxiety around that. I have some fear around that. Now, what that fear does in that moment, it really supports me in paying attention to make sure I do all the things necessary to care for myself through the process, understanding that even if I do all those things, I'm still vulnerable. But I don't let that prevent me from taking long haul flights. Question. I saw you bow. I thought you were raising your hand. Yes, Mio Zen.
Is there something that you especially like to do to recover yourself or to get your strength back after a challenging time?
Yeah, I think 4 liters of vanilla ice cream, 2 cheesecakes, and 6 containers of vanilla pudding. No, actually, I don't. I just let it run its course. You know, it's traveling this way from Europe back here. The transition is somehow different. It's different. I want to say easier, but I don't know if that's true. It's just different. So coming in this direction, west. Let's say traveling west. I would say the adjustment process for me is anywhere from 3 to 5 days. And then I feel pretty stable. But I don't have that. When I travel east to west, you know, the first day I'm pretty thick. I have a pretty thick head. So I make sure that I don't do too much for the first 10 days. Well, you know, I don't take any commitments. Sometimes I can get into I can be doing a lot of things, you know. That's what I have to be careful of. So when I make a transition from point A to point B, I see there are things to do, and I'm a to-do kind of person. And so like I just want to do everything at once. I said, okay, I'm here, now I gotta do stuff. And so what I've had to do is temper that. That means I've had to be more cautious about that. So I'm better at that now. In the beginning, I wasn't. I had to do everything in the first 2 days. I had to, yes. And now I'm a bit different. First couple of days, I just take it easy. It's like, you know, I go to bed when I'm tired. That means like the first couple of days, I was going to bed like 8:30, and then I would wake up. I wake up periodically anyway, but then I would be like, okay, 3 a.m. I'm sort of done. But then I go, no, I'm not getting out of bed yet. Yeah, I'm just going to hang out here for a while. So I just roll around, I cuddle up, and I'm thankful for the air conditioning. And yeah, and then at a certain point, I just go, okay, that's enough. I can't lay here anymore. I'm done. I get up. Could be 5, could be 4:30, could be 5:30. I just do it, and then I just fix my tea, fix a piece of toast, and I just do my routine. I just get into my routine. Yeah, took me a while. Takes me a while generally. So because in Europe I'm in a particular routine. I come here and that routine is shifted because things are in different places, and so I have to learn my way. I have to sort of reacclimate myself. Like yesterday morning, I make a pot of tea. And then I have 1 cup in the morning, and what's left in the pot, I pour in another cup and put it in the refrigerator. I have that at 6 p.m. But when I'm in Europe, I'll have a teapot, like the same. So I do a different routine. The cups are a little bit bigger, so I just make 1 cup of tea. And then yesterday morning, I just made my tea, and I went, oh, I made a cup, not a pot. So then I had to shift it around, and you know, it's just like part of the transition. Pay attention. There are certain things that in the first 3 days that I'm careful about, like driving, because I'm not so focused. I'm careful about that. Like I drove to the supermarket, to the Lebensmittel, and driving back. I was driving and I was taking a right-hand turn in front of an abandoned cinema, and there's a little curb there. Now I had the truck, it sits high, and I started to drive up. I started to go over the curb. I cut it too short. I mean, it wouldn't have hurt anything, but Kenshin brought it to my attention. I went, oh, yes, okay, thanks, and backed off. And see, I just know I just need to be a little bit more slow and direct and pay attention. But I just give myself the chance to adjust. That's all. Questions? Yes, Milko.
I'm curious if, Anshin, when you make a mistake, or how do you beat yourself up when you make a mistake, or what your process has been
Yeah, generally
with that?
generally today I don't. Um, depending on the consequences of the mistake, I generally don't. I just go, oh, okay. So it's a learning experience for me. It's like I like to say, I'm rather thankful for the mistakes that I make because it helps me to learn. I think it's unrealistic to expect that I won't make any mistakes. Now, there are some times when, so adjusting to not having a full grip with my hand. There's a couple of times I've dropped things and broken some things, and that's just a bit disappointing to me. You know, it's like I don't like to do that. I don't like breaking stuff because I don't like, because I'm not of the mindset, well, you can just buy another one. I don't like thinking like that. I like really caring for the things that I have and caring for things, caring for things with kindness, love, and respect, whatever that means to me. And so, but I don't beat myself up. Not anymore. There may have been a time when I did that, but not anymore. Questions? I saw also that's a benefit of practice. You know, to accept the fact that I'm of the nature to make mistakes. To expect that I won't make them is unrealistic. So once I accept that I'm of the nature to make mistakes, then when I make them, I don't sort of torture myself about that. I just realize that I've made a mistake. I can understand my thought processes and my actions that led to that mistake, and then I can begin to refine these processes. It's learning for me. The waking up. Question. Yes, Genrai.
After you finish events or finish a lot of traveling with a lot of meeting people, do you take a specific time to reflect on it or let something sink in or think about it?
Yes, after an intensive period, like I just went through, I don't take a specific time. I don't go say, okay, I'm going to reflect on this. I don't do that. But what happens is that the experiences of that particular time period will begin to show themselves to me, and also I go through this space after every really intense period where I've got a lot of meetings, a lot of commitments. I'm facilitating. I got a lot of responsibility. I'm facilitating retreats. I'm doing talks. Like I always go through a period of time, or let's say I won't say always. I go through a period of time where I feel I wonder. I go through a period of time where I wonder if anything that I do has any worth or value. And that rolls into, then do I have any worth or value? And that rolls into, well, what is worth or value? How do you measure that? So there is a reflecting process that gets set into motion, it's really, I find myself in spaces where people won't often go. I just find myself in these places. They can feel heavy, they can feel dark, they can feel, there's a certain, because of the level of energy that I was directing all the time and then suddenly not have it, there's I think a process of withdrawal from that I also need to experience, the transition. And this kind of this heaviness, this intense reflection about worth and value and all of that is part of that reflective period. Um, yeah, and then there's when I'm in this highly reflective space, I'm also pretty vulnerable, sensitive to the world. I'm a little bit more. I'm like hypersensitive to the world around me, and I have to be cautious about how I work with that, because it can feel like an overwhelming weight. You know, and it's like the question can arise, like, what is the point? Really, what's the point? And then I generally reassure myself in those spots by saying, well, the point is the point. You know, it's like, I don't know what the point is. I just do what I do. You know, there are also the times when I crave for some explosive, enlightening experience where I can just heal the world, and I know that's magical thinking, and really the very most important process is to understand that the world and I aren't two things, and so to wake up to the world and me. And as I heal, which means for me not reacting in the destructive ways in which I did, emotionally, psychologically, and destructive, is not only external actions, but it's also self, internal actions. How I respond internally, and to be cautious about that. I did some small repairs. I cut some hedges and did some things like that, and slow. Well, I mean, slow for me. Slow for me. Went for a walk yesterday. Had tea with some folks. Yeah. Question? Yes, Kenshin.
How would you finish the sentence, at the end of my life?
I will be dead. You know, it's just true. The end is just the end. I don't know anything beyond that. I was talking with a neighbor. See, and again, this may seem like random conversation, but really this is the practice this is the practice in action. It's how all of the teachings from the sutras, and I studied extensively all the teachings from the sutras, all the hours and hours and hours I spent on the cushion, and seeing how that, and really committedly carrying that into everything I do all the time, learning how to keep my mouth shut. I don't have to run the show. I can understand when I want to talk too fast, or I can understand when in circumstances where I'm insecure or uncertain, I can be quiet. I can just be quiet. I don't have to avoid my fear, my anxiety. I don't have to do that anymore. I can just be present there in the moment. Or I can just be present with my unpresentness. Because sometimes I'm just, like when we were visiting with these people for tea yesterday, one of them said, "Oh, you're so calm." And in fact, I said, "Well, thanks." And the truth is, I wasn't calm. I was just sort of I wasn't processing anything. Yeah, I was just quiet. Yeah. And that's it's good to just be quiet. Yeah. So yeah, at the end of it, and I tell you, that's something though that enters into my mind more frequently now. Yeah, I think I said it out loud in this last series of commitments I had. I said it out loud, and in November, I'm gonna be 75. I went, really? 75? Wow, that's quite a number. Yeah. And so I do realize that, I mean, I realize that I'm closer to the end than to the beginning. Maybe. Right? I mean, who knows? Because I also thought, well, what's it like for a fetus? A fetus is developed, and then it has this comfortable, really secure life, and then all of a sudden it's cast out. We call that birth. How does a fetus experience that? Yeah? Because for me, it's like, okay, this is the fetus's world, and all of a sudden it's sort of cast out of that world. It's just like death. And then it finds itself in this, and it's like, what's this? Yeah. So I don't have any formulaic ideas about what's next, what's at the end of this life. I don't have any formulaics about that. I don't need to, but I do have a measure of kind of pensiveness now, a reflectiveness about I'm closer to the reality. Although the way I've lived my life, man, I've always been really close to the reality of dying. I mean, overdoses, the embolism, war, being shot, stabbed, blown up. I'm going to do a neurological exam here, and I had to fill out a paper, and they said, "Have you ever had any head injuries?" I went, "Well, yeah, I have. You know, head injuries in football, head injuries in athletics, head injuries in the military. I mean, I was blown up. Do I have what's referred to as traumatic brain injury? I don't think so, but you know, I don't have any clue about this stuff. I just put it down on paper. But when I put it down on paper, I go, wow, geez, that I'm still here is pretty amazing. I would like to continue, but I do know that this physical plant is changing. I know that. I do my best to keep it fit. I had an encounter with someone, MJ and Kenshin and I were on a walk yesterday, and I encountered someone at where we were walking who works at this place, and he was born in 1973, and he was putting me in his age group. So in his mind, he was putting me in his age group, and I said, "No, I was born in 65." He kind of went, "Whoa, you know, you look." He said, "You hold your age well." But next to him, I felt young, man. But that it doesn't really mean anything. It can, like this, it can change. And I'm more sensitive to that fragility, and I'm for the most part sort of okay. So I gotta live. So it means I really need to live now, take care of right now. I don't have time to waste myself on petty, what I consider sort of petty things. Although some issues need to be addressed. So I address them. Yeah. I don't abandon my responsibilities in life, but I just kind of go, geez, really? That's a bit too short for some of this stuff. Time.
You still have 10 minutes.
Okay, last questions? Yes, Miyoko. Yo!
With what you were just sharing, do you think of what you might leave behind for Zachary?
Yeah, I mean, I've already laid that out. You know, but I think yeah, I mean, are you talking about stuff that I would leave behind for Zachary, or are you talking about what I'd leave behind for Zach?
So where it was in my head was like an object, it's meaningful object.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what's meaningful for him. Yeah, I have commissioned some things to him in my will, but what I hope he's left with is that I have lived my life well, and that I've cared, that I've been the best father that I can be, and that he's been loved by me. Yeah. And that he knew that, and that somehow he knew that if he, that I was available to him. If he needed something, he could always call me.
Thank you for listening to this episode on Zaltho Live. If you would like additional information, please look at the show notes or visit zaltho.org. That's ZALTHO.org. Our work is made possible solely through donations, so please consider making a tax-deductible gift on our website. We wish you well and thank you.